The Fantasy Six-Pack Hour. With your hosts, Joe Bond.
You're awful.
And AJ Applegarth.
It's Sin Shu Chu. It's a mouthful.
All right. Welcome to the Fantasy Six-Pack Hour. My name is Joe Bond, founder of FantasySixPack.net. With me, a new co-host for the week. Googly Bear actually showed up this week. What's going on, man?
That's right. Here in full force, ready to see everything that we have about the prospects in MLB. So yes,
And you've got a friend with you.
I do. This is Randall. That's also Randall under the Ass Man. That's not Ass Man. That is Randall Boggs. Back in his younger years and the
no idea what's going on right now.
college days of Monsters University. For those of you familiar,
Yes, very familiar. Good movies, but yeah, that's a new one, man.
Representing my awesome O's sign again. Thank you, lovely wife. My Fireball sign is also a gift from my wife.
Do you have your new bobblehead behind you too? Because
I do.
I slapped
Right
mine on there. I
See,
think
look at
I
that.
see
Look at
it
that
is.
thumb action. Look how good
Yeah.
that is. Damn. Should be hitchhiking right now.
Regular old Vanna White over here.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. All right, man. Yeah, so you alluded to it. We're doing a special podcast tonight to review the MLB draft that occurred a few weeks ago. And we're going to have our good friend Chris Blessing on to join us here. But before we get started, just want to remind everybody, hit that like button, that follow button, give us those reviews. 5 stars, guys, please. We appreciate everything that you guys do, and we appreciate you guys listening. So hit us back up. Anyway, let's get to it and bring on our guest of honor, Mr. Chris Blessing. What is up, man? Glad to have you back on. How's it going?
I'm doing well. How about you guys?
Hanging in there.
Fantastic. Can you hear me all right? I feel like I'm a little far away from the mic, so I need to project my voice more in the Googly Bear spirit.
I'm sure
I
your
haven't
wife.
been drinking yet.
I'm sure your wife is loving you yelling in the house right now, but that's cool.
She can't hear me.
Yeah, mine says she always hears like half of the first of our show because she doesn't watch TV until like 30 or so minutes into it. She's like, "Oh yeah, I heard that part." I'm like,
She'll hear me because she's probably listening because she can hear the Googly Bear entrance.
Anyway, let's just get right to it, man. Do our beer of the week.
Beer.
All right, Chris, guest of honor, what you got on tap tonight?
Yes, I have Highland Brewing from Asheville. Sorry, it's
Nice.
like I'm drunk already. This is really the first beer I've had all night. I picked this beer. It's called the Avl IPA, and the reason why I picked this beer is it's a tropical, juicy citrus IPA from one of my favorite cities, Asheville, which I will be covering the Asheville Tourists this week as they play the Rome Braves here in Rome, Georgia.
Nice.
So figured I'd theme my beer at the store today.
I like it, man. I like it. Coming in strong. AJ, Googly Bear, what's up?
Excellent. I didn't tell you mine, so the one on the ticker is totally from last week. But
Oh, my bad.
I
didn't ask you.
I am
I suck.
drinking
I'll fill it in
Legend.
now.
Wait for it, dairy.
What are you
Out of
drinking?
a Jackalope Brewing Company, Nashville, Tennessee, pint glass, but it is from Maryland, Bog Turtle Brewing, and it is the Papa Hoppa. It is the growler that I got, and about halfway through it, so it should be fun.
All right, good stuff. I'm drinking another other half. Big surprise. You know, I told you I loaded up last week, so this is going to be a theme for a while. This one is a triple liquid gems. It's an Imperial IPA. It's actually 10%er, so I might be catching up to you soon, AJ. But no, this is a good one, man. I give it a 4. I was expecting more out of this one, I'll be honest with you, but it's still pretty solid. You know, 4's good for me. So,
Yeah.
cheers, guys, and let's have a good show.
All right. Cheers.
All right, man. So yeah, we had the MLB draft just a couple weeks ago, right?
Yeah, it was 2 weeks ago, I think.
Yeah. So the one thing that stuck out to me in this draft before it even started was there was no locked in number 1 pick, in my opinion, and you heard that across from a lot of people on Twitter, and like I don't follow it as much as you do, so maybe you thought there was a locked in guy, but I saw a lot of people saying that there wasn't a locked in first pick. You know, who knew where everybody was gonna go? Like, do you think that was because there was just a lot of good players, like a lot of maybe elite players, or there wasn't that like elite player, missing, and that elite player was missing from the draft, and so we just had a lot of very, very good players at the top?
I think it's more the very, very good players at the top. I had Marcelo Meyer as my number 1 prospect in this draft, but I mean, we had several prospects that were right around there, and you could have flipped a coin to really determine who was the best overall prospect. And I think that there's a lot of reasons that there's reasons for that, I should say, and it's definitely somewhat COVID related, if that makes sense. I feel like our evaluation season was different than any other evaluation seasons we've come across before. For instance, we didn't have the college hitters that we normally have, because a lot of the college hitters there, we didn't see them in the summertime. While there was a lot of high school prep showcases going on across the country, mostly down here in the South, where COVID regulations were, at times very non-existent. Those showcases gave teams the opportunity to have guys on tape, whether they sent scouts there or not. They had specifically prep hitters on tape. So they were a little further along in their evaluation when the high school season and the college season started. And we also saw with the college bats, except for a guy that we'll talk about a little later, Henry Davis, who was a Louisville catcher who went to the Pirates as the first overall pick. Most of our big bats from college actually disappointed this year. We kind of saw guys that, like Judd Fabian, who got picked by the Red Sox in the 2nd round. I mean, he looked like a first round pick, top 10 pick coming into the season, and he struggled mightily with his timing for most of the early, I guess, 3/4 of the season. So for 3/4 of the season, he didn't look right. And so what that ended up doing was kind of pushing the sure things, the better bats back in this draft. And, really and truly, we also had a bunch of good starting pitching out of the college ranks, but only really 2 of those guys were at the top of the heap, which was Jack Leiter, who went number 2 overall, and Kumar Rocker, who went number 10 overall. And the both Vanderbilt pitchers, and guys, if you watch the College World Series, were guys that, had a pretty big audience and were well known.
If you follow the emblem on your hat there, they love those guys. They're phenomenal. I love watching the little clips on Pitching Ninja, man.
Yeah, for whatever reason, when I wear this to games, people think I am the dude, but I don't look like the dude at all, which is really crazy. I'm just.
They probably just don't even know.
Yeah, and they're like, why are you wearing this hat? And I was like, well, I can't wear a hat that has an emblem for a team, and it seems like every Columbia hat bleeds through my sweat at games. So it kind of ruins the hat. So I've got to go with something. So I went with this nice thing from the fine folks at RotoWear, maybe they'll send me something for that. I love RotoWare. Half of my baseball themed T-shirts are RotoWare T-shirts. So good guys over there. Got to meet one of them in Florida last year. But anyway, like that is why the draft was maybe not as strong up top. I think if you look at this draft in a few years ago, it's going to be a draft where a team is going to. I'll be honest. I think that the best player is somebody that is probably going to be in the 3rd to 8th round. It's going to be a total surprise to people because we weren't able to evaluate them like every other draft except for last year's where we got cut off because of COVID.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and I mean it kind of aligns with what I was kind of hearing reading the chatter on Twitter about about this draft and these players coming in. So
yeah. So speaking of the College World Series, obviously the next question we have here is, I mean, how much do the college stats really play a part in the evaluations of a player for the draft?
A few years ago, I would be like, stats, whatever. I want to see their underlying data. But you look at somebody like Will Bednar, who was a pitcher for Mississippi State, who's the winning pitcher in the final game of the College World Series. And, I wasn't necessarily as high on him as some of the teams were as high on him. And primarily it was, I saw a 2-pitch mix. It was basically fastball slider. And they played well, both in rates and also performance. He was one of the better pitchers in the SEC this year. And I think that his performance in the College World Series specifically elevated him from a guy who is maybe considered a top 40 pick to somebody who was in the top 20, and he eventually went 14th to the Giants. So when the lights are the brightest and the guy is performing, excuse me, I just burped some AVL here.
It's all right,
but
man. I do it
see,
from
that's
time to
the
time.
one thing you're not used to on this podcast. Is I'm not used to drinking beer and talking. I think you guys get me. Well, hopefully you don't get me too drunk.
We're good. Don't worry about it. We've both been there.
But anyway, yeah, and I've been there. I've been there on this podcast before too. I mean, really, the big thing here is, yes, they matter. It mattered for Judd Fabian falling to the 2nd round. And I love that the Red Sox picked him up in the 2nd round because I feel like they're one of the organizations that will where he could thrive in. I assume he signs. They're probably going to give him a pretty healthy bonus, especially since he's one of the few guys that has tremendous leverage in this draft, which is another factor that needs to be considered in this. Is because of the COVID year, we have extra years of eligibility. So he's a sophomore with essentially, 3-4 years left. I mean, it's tremendous the amount of leverage a guy like Judd Fabian has to have a higher bonus than you would normally see.
Yeah, it's always interesting because I'm more of a football prospect guy than I am baseball. That's why we've got you here for sure for this show.
I appreciate that.
If you look at college stats for football, right? You're like, oh man, this guy was amazing. But how many times do we see the Heisman Trophy winner just be absolutely garbage in the NFL because he's not a real pro player? I kind of wondered how that kind of lined up with college baseball players to pro baseball players, and you kind of went into that, so that was good. So you've already mentioned his name, Jordan Lawler. He was the first pick of the draft, and we saw.
Well, not Lawler. You mean?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Not him. Sorry.
Henry Davis.
Yeah. Henry Davis. My bad. Henry Davis. He was the first pick of the draft, a catcher. Last year we had Rossman, catcher. 2 years ago. Yeah, and then
2 out of 3 years though. It's where does?
But then even 2 years before that, I think with Joey Bart was number 1, right?
He was number 2, but I mean,
either way, they're really high.
there.
So why are we seeing catchers who, in my opinion, they're super valuable defensive wise, in my opinion, more so than anything else in Major League Baseball. But why are we seeing these guys who are going to give very minimal offensive stats, probably 49 times out of 50, go first and second so often lately?
Well, I think that it's, in Bart's case, Bart was a player I saw a bunch at Georgia Tech with him just being down the road. And Bart was a good combination of a guy that you believe will hit for power in the big leagues with the catch-throw ability behind home plate. So, it almost was a safe pick and for the Giants, even though it's a catcher. And then, of course, Rushman's probably the best catcher we've seen since the Buster Posey days. And Joe Mauer even before that. I hope so for you guys as well. We're going to have our top 50 tomorrow or on Wednesday come out at the site. And, on my list, he was number 3 overall for fantasy, which is really high for a catcher. And it was something that, I had no qualms putting him there because he's really, I think, the best prospect in baseball when you take away the whole fantasy part of it because of what he brings behind home plate as a catcher.
Be number 1 at fantasy lists.
Yeah,
he's
it's a little hard. I mean, Bobby Witt Jr. is my number 1. My number 2 is Julio Rodriguez. Guy. And you could make a case from 2 to 5 between Rodriguez, Torkelson, Rushman, and even the injured C.J. Abrams. I really feel like you can make a good argument there for any of them at 2, but it's hard for me to find Witt not being the number 1 guy just because he can possibly fill up 5 categories in regular format. But anyway, getting away from the question, I look at it as best player available or best player to work your draft. So going into the draft, most outlets had Marcelo Meyer as the top pick for the Pirates. Not top rated. Most sites had Jordan Lawler, who was I think my number 2 guy. If I don't have that list in front of me anymore. But Davis made sense in the 2 reasons. Number 1, he was clear, far and away the best bat of the collegiate bat class this year. It's a weird setup. It's really kind of he's kind of like a laid back guy in a crouch at the plate. He looks like he's almost sitting in a seat with an open stance. It's kind of wild. It's not, you get so used to these cookie cutter stances. It reminds me of, I can't even think of the NES video game where they had a guy that was batting like that. But incredible plate coverage, hits the ball hard, makes hard contact, good exit velocity, has the power and stuff. He was clearly the best collegiate bat. And if you look at the Pirates organization, especially through trades, they've been making a lot of trades lately in the last 3 years. They've been getting a lot of toolsy contact. On my podcast this week, on the Eyes Have It podcast, I talk about Leovar Peguero, who they acquired in the Starling Marte deal. And he's a top 100 prospect, but he's very, very, there's a lot of risk still involved. He's a 20-year-old in high A. There's some swing mechanic issues that need to be worked out for him to get there. So Davis and their previous pick last year, Nick Gonzalez, kind of, they're different than what they're acquiring other places. They're proven college bats. And while Davis didn't have a Cape Cod season, he would have probably performed well there had he had one last season. So they were going for the best performer, best hitter. And there's also talk that maybe catcher's not his long-term position. He could be a guy that would produce at first base. He could be a guy that produces in left field. I think he's kind of limited beyond those 2 positions. But there is a backup if it doesn't work at catcher. While Bart, there wasn't really any backup. You're buying the glove as well. And same with Rushman. I think he could have probably played somewhere else, but you were buying the glove at 1-1. He was the best player of that draft 2 years ago. So I mean, that's my answer. I know I went off filter, but I wanted to kind of explain the Pirates' rationale a bit, and also that cash savings, they probably saved a few $1 million. I haven't seen a figure come out. Let them afford other players later in the draft, specifically a third rounder who is committed as a two-sport guy in football, Clemson guy, Clemson quarterback and a pitcher shortstop who, for the major league purposes, for minors as a pitcher, is Bubba Chandler from North Oconee High School here in Georgia. So, like, to be able to afford him as well as some of the other picks, they had a really strong first half of the draft and really and truly have put a lot of pitching talent, a lot of overall talent into their organization that they didn't necessarily have a couple of years ago, and they've done it through managing the draft, a la what the Houston Astros did the year that they took Carlos Correa and Lance McCullers in the first two rounds. We're able to pay them both as first round picks. I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah, it looks like Henry Davis got $6.5 million, and his pick value was 8.4. So they saved about $2 million.
$2 million, so, and that $2 million will go to probably to Bubba.
There's a lot of guys up top that went, cheaper, and we'll get. I'm sure you'll get into that too. But it's all there. I'm just using the MLB draft tracker to get that info. So Anyway, let's jump into this. You helped me kind of mold this show. You got your list of guys, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna break it down to different categories of players, and the first category of players we're going to talk about here is kind of the all-around category stuffers. I guess you want to call this like your five-toolie guys, right? So give us your first guy here on your list that we want to talk about here.
Yeah, I picked Jordan Lawler for this. And the reason why I picked Jordan Lawler is he's probably he's a Texas kid. He's from the Dallas area, and the comp that got thrown around, and I kind of you see the comp, but it's a bit unfair because Bobby Witt Jr., who came out of the draft a few years ago with Adley Rushman. I mean, we're talking about that 2019 draft is fire. I mean, C.J. Abrams is also in my top five, and that's three of the top five guys that I have. But he was getting comp to Bobby Witt Jr., but I don't see that comp because I don't see an exceptional or a double plus tool in Jordan Lawler. I see, if everything works out, 4 out of 5 of his tools being plus tools. And in fantasy, that's a big deal because he's drafted as shortstop. He's gonna stick there. That is one of his 60 grade skills. And on the 20/80 scale, a plus tool is 60 or above. Plus is 70 or above. And Witt Jr. has some borderline 70 type talent, especially with the hit and power, or not hit, run and power tool. Lawler kind of tops out. I think his hit tool has the ability to be a potential 300 hitter. I don't think the power is plus, but I've seen some outlets, and I've talked to a few scouting contacts that have had his power at the 60 grade level, which for me is, nowadays is about a 30 home run hitter. I have him a little back down, maybe in the 20-25 range. But this is the guy that this is the guy that's going to fill up several categories, and that's why I picked him and the other guy that I'm going to focus on for this as the two guys, especially in the first round, that fit this mold.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, I mean, another guy here is, we'll let you jump into him, the guy that was picked right before Jordan Lawler, and that's Colton Krauser with, again, the Orioles. So Orioles are stockpiling some good picks here, it looks like, so maybe that'll turn into something. What do you think about Krauser?
Yeah, a lot of people, I think it was a little bit of a surprise somewhat that they took him at 5, but then it wasn't a surprise given that these guys have come from the Astros Astros system, which was even, you can all go all the way back to the Cardinals. If anybody has perfected getting the most bang for your slot buck, it is these guys. And so Krauser is a left-handed hitter. He has an upright stance. He's a spray hitter, and that's, I like him a lot for those purposes. He's also a plus runner. He will also stick in center field. So in like formats where, position is important or defensive skills, I don't play those leagues that often, but I know some of my subscribers do, and they ask me about that. So like those type of things are big deals. This guy rarely swings at balls outside of the zone. In fact, his reportedly his O swing, which is his swing percentage on balls outside of the plate, is extremely low. Like, this guy does not expand the zone at all. And he's one of the few guys, even though it was Sam Houston State that performed this year throughout the season. I do have some concerns. I think that his, while he has a spray approach, I think his power is mostly to the pull side. I did see some evidence that, in some of the at-bats that I scouted, that he can hit it out the other way, but it's almost by accident. I like to see him, kind of do what, kind of what Michael Conforto does. He's a guy that I'm really familiar with. That's why I'm throwing his name out there. A guy that can maybe ambush the other way, the gap the other way, and might be able to get a home run every so often that way. But, primarily we're talking about a guy that's going to get most of his home run production to the pull side. I don't think that he is in Lawler's class in the sense that they're both, with the potential of being several plus tools together. But I feel like Krauser's the guy that has the most above average, maybe the guy right below that can carry the above average stat stuffing category.
Yeah, and average is so hard to gauge, I feel like, a lot of times, because it's just one of those categories. You just end up punting it. And in our league, Fantasy Six-Pack League, we changed it to OBP years ago because we were just tired of average. And OBP is still something that you can't necessarily control and predict, but I feel like it's easier to find guys that are better at OBP than guys that are better at
a little more predictable. But and it'll be interesting. Like, I'm guessing by the time Krauser is ready to come up, Cedric Mullins won't be a thing anymore. So
I guess that's
interesting. Cedric Mullins is playing crazy good.
He's been awesome this year,
and he's young too.
And then that's the thing is, like, when you're talking about the draft, you can't talk about who's blocking who.
Oh, of course, yeah.
We don't know we don't know the progression of these players. You could see Mullins moving off the position at some point, and who knows? He could be signed to a long-term deal, and this is the center fielder that saves his legs.
He could also get traded, because that's what the O's do.
The Orioles trade.
Oh, we have somebody that's good. All right. Get him out.
But we're going to keep Chris Davis until he, whatever.
One more year.
Chris Davis,
finally.
Money? Sure, take it.
We got his bobblehead way over there on the other bookshelf.
I have.
You're not on my show, buddy.
You don't want to jinx the other bobbleheads, right?
You're not on my show. You don't deserve it.
The other bobbleheads would, get a doctor's note when they need one. So
they just strike out a lot more. Anyway, let's move on here to the next category, and the next one we've got here listed is the best players that have a power hit tool combo.
Yeah, and this is actually, the easiest, because we've already been talking a bit about Marcelo Meyer, and we've been talking about Henry Davis, and Henry Davis is also in this category. Right. But let's look at Meyer to start out with, and Meyer is, I think, in this draft is the dude that has the power-driven hit tool of the prep class. I think that there's some question with some other guys whether they're going to hit or not. Yeah, what was that? was that your bottle?
That was
the
his
growler, yeah.
That was the growler.
Just,
That's hysterical.
We're a professional show.
Don't mind me.
Yeah, I'm all right. Back to it. Marcelo Meyer. Sorry.
No, it's all good, man. I'm laughing too.
I think what impresses me most about guys that have power-driven hit tools are the ones that seem to get to their power within their hit tool so effortlessly. And watching the showcase circuit this year, I didn't really have much video on him during the season. I had to rely on secondhand reports a lot for my evaluation on that. But watching him during the showcase season, which is going on now for the 2022 draft picks. They already had PG Worlds. They'll have the various different games like East Coast Pro and the one out on the West Coast too. But like he was the guy that consistently, even in games, even against really good pitching, consistently got to his barrel. And like I feel like that there's plus power potential with the chance at plus hitting potential as well. So you're talking about a guy that has the ability to be like maybe a 35 plus home run hitter with a high average, which right now we're all starved for that in our leagues.
So 280.
Yeah, like I mean, 280. Which by the way, in my dynasty league right now, I have a 280 or above batting average in it.
That's impressive.
I've been an absolute master over several years of creating the greatest dynasty thing, and hopefully they don't all get injured like Ronald Acuna. But like, it's
like my entire dynasty team right now.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have it on this team
this year.
On this team, I have Bogarts, Devers, Acuna, Vlad Guerrero Jr., Starling Marte, who's one of my least guys with the BA, Adam Frazier for protection. Like it's been a great collection, man. And this has been for years. This is a dynasty league, so like it is. It's been building for a while. So like when we're talking about building for a while, I picked up Vlad Guerrero Jr. at this age. Granted, he was an international pick, but like at the Marcelo Meyer age, and dreaming on the tool set that it might end up being plus on both the hit and the power. So I brought that up not to just brag, although I'm going to brag. Hopefully, I win the money for that league because I'm not doing good in any of the expert leagues. I think this year I'm done with expert leagues. I'm not that type of player unless it's dynasty or keeper. I can't play them. But I bring that up for the point that any of these prep guys you're drafting for 4 to 5 years from now.
I was just going to ask you that. Like, so when you take these guys in a dynasty league, so especially the high school, the prep guys, like you're waiting 4 or 5 years. Like you just have to expect that. And so it's, if you're close to winning, if you think your team is close to competing, would you take a Marcelo Meyer over like somebody else who could help you in 2 years or 3 years, if that's where your window is?
Heck yeah. I just traded in one of my leagues, Marco Luciano, where I'm also competing. And the reason why I had him and why I targeted him was just for this instance. We're talking about a top 10 in baseball prospect right now.
Okay.
And I used him to get better for this championship run. You don't have to just use these guys like Marcelo Meyer or Jordan Lawler for 4 or 5 years from now. If you are competing, it's time to sell on guys. I have, thankfully, a deep enough minor league system, or I should, since I'm a prospect writer, who dabbles in this whole fantasy game.
I'm sure you are in a league with a lot of guys like you, unfortunately.
Actually, no. One league that I was in busted up this year, which was the RotoWire Dynasty League that James Anderson ran. It was very unfortunate because we were even though we were ridiculed by a few of my fellow, not James. James and I are great. I have, of all the fantasy guys, him and Eddie from Prospects Live are my two favorite dynasty writers outside of Baseball HQ. But like the thing is I got ridiculed for some of our roster decisions. Like everybody, I own this team with the RotoWire writer named Michael Rathburn, and
I know him.
Yeah, and Michael and I go back a long time. Actually, my mentor was his roommate in college, so it's kind of weird.
You have these random connections. Like
I know, I have so many
funny.
random connections. I have so many random connections. But that's how we became friends, was because of that. And I let him run things, and I learned from him. I learned from Rathburn. Rathburn's a veteran of all kinds of formats. And we built a really good team on guys that people didn't think were studs. And we did it with not much of a farm system, because I was in a league with people that, went after guys a lot earlier than I would go after them. So guys like Marcelo Meyer are great pickups in these first-year drafts, because whether you're a winning team or a losing team at the time, they'll have a benefit to you at some point, whether you get to keep them for all those 5 years, or, the trade deadline comes next year if you have an off-season draft, or if you have an in-season draft. And, I know that there's some rules about trading, guys this early in their career in some leagues, but I took advantage of it for Marco Luciano and ended up with Luis Castillo, and you know how he's been the last few weeks for the Reds.
Yeah, he's really coming on strong. I push it back in my rankings big time just recently.
Yeah. Ryan Bloomfield at Baseball HQ.
Another Hokie, by the way.
Another Hokie. You're correct. Bloomfield has done work, a lot of great fantasy work throughout the years and stuff. Former fantasy writer of the year, but he pointed out that Castillo is not a cold weather pitcher, which actually goes way back to when I saw him against Twins prospects several years ago. In very cold weather, he does not perform as well in the first 2 months of the year. And if you're a manager, on another team, you can take advantage of that type of thing. And I took advantage of it.
I don't know,
Thank you, Bloomfield.
He was, that's great information to have. I just feel like he was performing so bad. Like he was performing way worse than we've ever seen him perform. And it's just kind of what's going on? But that's great. Yeah. Kudos to Ryan for figuring that out.
Quite miserable. I was specifically looking for guys that were playing against him. It was just like, all right, they've got to get at least 2.
I mean, I was too.
Come on.
Yeah. All right. So who's? Sorry. Who's the
next guy here? You mentioned Davis.
I already mentioned Davis. Yeah. I'll just finish
summarize it.
Yeah, I'll finish that thought. Again, power-driven hit tool. Performer in college, was the only guy that met the expectations. And maybe exceeded them this year of those top 15 picks that were in college. Mm-hmm. Krauser was a guy that probably would have shot up boards quicker had it been for a Cape Cod League season or something like that. But power hit right there. I know catcher is a scary position, and I know people are adverse from picking these guys. But if you want the closest bat to the major leagues, it's probably this guy. And who really knows if he's going to be a catcher or not? Let's just be honest there. So,
well, hey, he'll probably have that eligibility at least for the first 2 years.
That will be
monster.
Wonderful.
So, all in on that.
Speaking of awesome catcher eligibility that I took advantage of was Josh Donaldson. His first year. Yeah, he had third base and catcher eligibility in Oakland.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't Josh Donaldson that we know and love, for at least, 60 healthy games. But it was phenomenal. I just picked him up. I'm like, dude, why? This guy's playing every day. why is nobody figuring this out yet?
Well, that was like
he's not a catcher. So yeah, it was great.
Yeah, there's been a few guys like that, but let's move on here to the next category of hitters, and this one is going to be the hit speed tool. So you've got a couple guys here, one picked up by the Brewers, one picked up by the Mariners. Sorry. I'll let you share your names.
All right, so we'll start with the college guy, which is Sal Fralick from Boston College. He got drafted by the Brewers. I was on the Prospect Live simulcast of the draft, and it was kind of, we all kind of agreed on that draft. It was really the perfect Brewers pick. It's a guy that, we've seen them take in the first round, maybe as a high school guy. We saw them take, I can't think of his name, shortstop. Oh my God, I'm totally blanking. Well, anyway, shortstop on the.
If you don't know, I'm not gonna know.
Yeah, shortstop on the Rocket City team. I scouted him. I think I even wrote him up this year. It's been that bad. I should check in my notebook. I'm sure he's there. But anyway, fits their profile. They, like guys that have high exit velocity, and they kind of value that over somebody with a launch angle. So this is a guy that's kind of a slasher who uses his run tool. He's a plus runner. And while he's shown some extreme power, power potential, I believe that he is your best combination from college of the hit and power tool, or hit and run tool. So that would be my college guy. Now for the high school guy, it's a guy that I'm familiar with from scouting him this year, and it's funny. At first, I wanted to just call him Henry Ford because of whatever. But I got over that after.
I almost typed that. I'm not gonna lie.
I know. It's hard. But his name's Harry Ford, and he's actually a very interesting guy. He was drafted as a catcher and a outfielder. I'm sorry, I'm really messing up here. I keep on looking at the googly guy there, and it's just too hard. I mean, it's like I
AJ,
catch it,
and
I get confused.
Which one?
It's all your fault.
There's multiple.
Yeah. But anyway, Ford is a guy that I primarily scouted his defense this year. I was assigned him with the organization that I work, and they wanted an evaluation of his catching and getting video on his catching. But what I got to see was a very explosive athlete. He's like a 5'9", spark plug looking player who looks like he plays like that 6'2" lean outfielder. He has somewhere between plus and double plus running tool. I called it a plus run tool. I had one of the best times I've ever had from a guy from the right-handed batter's box home to third base. He ended up sub 12.5. And to put that in context, Byron Buxton's the only guy that from the right-hand batter's box that I've ever had sub 11 or sub 12. So we're talking about a really fast guy at a position that you're not really used to seeing. I think he sticks at catcher, but I think that he's a guy that ends up being a dual eligibility type guy to save his legs, because his legs are such a asset to him. I comped him. A lot of people comp him to Russell Martin. I thought that was unfair because I never thought Martin was as good of an athlete as this guy. And while searching for a comp on him, it was very difficult. But I could see him, and I'm not comping him here. I'm just saying that this is the only scenario that I've seen in my history of baseball life, which is 41 years, so minus 5, so 36 years of my 41 years is what the Astros did with Craig Biggio. This is a kid that has, plus run, has a hit tool, I'm not saying he's Craig Biggio. Craig Biggio is a Hall of Fame player.
I'm quoting you on that one.
Never. Yeah. Nope. I got quoted once on something like that, and all I said was he had, but that's how unique this kid is. This kid has a very unique profile, and something that we don't ever really see. Since they announced him as an outfielder, and the catcher, if the athletic ability is what it is, he's going to probably be an outfielder when he's older, when he matures. But again, just like Applegarth said, taking advantage of the eligibility for Donaldson for those first year, that might be something with Ford, kind of like what a few of us did with Kyle Schwarber. But we're talking about a catcher that's going to, maybe with dual eligibility, that's going to get us stolen bases and a good hit tool, as opposed to what Schwarber did, which was unbelievable power out of the catching position.
Yeah, that's a great comp too, and another great dual eligibility reference there too. I wasn't even thinking about Schwarber, but that's one of the reasons so many people went after him, was for that catcher eligibility.
Yeah.
It's easily the tight end of the baseball fantasy world in that there's a couple of guys that you really care about, and the rest you just stream.
Or
you
get lucky.
Don't even play.
There's two guys that are gonna randomly be good, that were super late. Posey was one this year, so who saw that coming back? But we've seen it, year in and year out with both of those. Yeah, we say it all the time, but.
All right, let's compare these two kind of take the hybrid from this and go with the best power speed guys that you're thinking here. We got a guy from the Marlins and a guy from the Rockies.
Yeah, I'll hit the guy with the Marlins first. He was the guy that fell the most in the draft. Khalil Watson, North Carolina prep player. And when we're talking about falling in this draft, a lot of people that are observers understand that this slot game is going on. So essentially, each team has a allocated slot that they can spend on players. It's not saving money. They didn't save money with the Pirates with Henry Davis. They just allocated their money differently. So Watson fell in this draft because he, I guess didn't fit the team's, strategy for the rest of the draft, because you're filling, essentially 10 guys in the first 10 rounds with that allocated slot. So you've got to be very careful with how you spend your money. So in my eyes, the Marlins got a complete steal, and Watson's a lot like a player that's on their major league roster right now. And I think everybody, sometimes I call it lazily throws out a comp, but watching this guy, the only guy I thought of was Jazz Chisholm. This is the sort of profile that I would imagine Jazz was at this age. Granted, Jazz was an international signee from the Bahamas. It's a little different. But Khalil, has that unbelievable exit velocity coupled with the launch angle. And he gets to his power really well in his swing. We're talking about a guy that has the potential of getting up to 70 grade power. I don't think he has the greatest power tool in this draft. And I don't think we discussed any of those guys. I think Brady House is that guy, but there's some other considerations there with him that doesn't have him on any of these lists, or so I don't remember putting him on I didn't put him on any of these lists. That's good.
That's all right.
But
I'm reading that he could actually move to outfield.
He could. He's that good of an athlete. He is a tremendous athlete. So, and that's what we said about Chisholm too. And to go to another guy from another team, Vidal Brujon. We said the same thing about him. Yeah. We've seen Brujon move all over the place now.
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to be like the Rays utility player for years to come. I mean, he's going to play a different position every day. I mean, that guy, and in that one dynasty league, that's the one guy I've said that's untouchable because I want to take advantage of all of that for as many years as
and
possible.
When he actually comes up and stays up, he's going to be so good.
Oh yeah, he is. He's a little overmatched in that first little taste, but I'm okay with that. He got me a stolen base, and that's what I desperately needed. So, anyway, Watson's that kind of player that if you're a Jazz Chisholm fan or if you're a guy that has, missed out on him 4 or 5 years from now, the Marlins have shown, even though they picked him up halfway in his development, to have already developed a player like Watson in Chisholm. So, this is a category that you're, really focused on. While there's a lot of high upside guys that the Marlins have missed on, it hasn't been missed. These aren't guys that they went out and acquired. They acquired Chisholm. They didn't, another regime, the previous regime prior to Derek Jeter regime, acquired all these other toolsy guys. So, they're getting the combinations that work best for them now for their player development. Yeah. I love this pick. This is probably the biggest value pick of the whole draft. And then going on to my other pick for this category is a guy that I'm not really enamored with, to be honest. And in a future question, he'll come up again. But Benny Montgomery, who went to the Rockies. Yeah, you know what one. I'm not a big fan of Rockies drafts. And I'm interested to see what the turnover in that organization might happen with they're on an interim GM now, and who knows who they hire, how that's going to play out. But they love to target the power tool. And in this case, they got power and speed, just like Zach Veen last year, who's a top 50 prospect now, a guy that I was a little hesitant about during the draft last year and during our show last year. I thought some of my colleagues and competitors had him ranked a little too high to start out with. And, I still believe they had him a little too high. I think that he's performed a little better. I think that there's a lot of swing and miss there. I think there's more swing and miss with Benny Montgomery than I did with Veen. So I'm very bearish with Montgomery. But I've got to acknowledge that he has the same sort of power potential as the guys that we discussed so far, like Watson and, I mentioned Brady House. The thing is, and he also can steal bases as well. I think that we're talking about a guy that has plus running skills. My fear with this guy is that he's going to strike out a ton, and the Rockies have, struck out a lot recently on profiles just like this.
Yeah, that's a killer for leagues, more for points leagues. Obviously, roto leagues aren't looking at strikeouts, but that hurts the average. So, it'll hurt you there. But, points league, if you're in one of those leagues that dings you for strikeouts, man, he's a guy that you're going to want to stay away from. I mean, Aaron Judge was that guy for me in my dynasty league I used to be in. I loved his upside and, reap the benefits from it, but he would murder me with the case. And it's like, dude, come on. Like, you're bashing homers left and right. That's awesome. But you've got to figure this out. And I ended up trading him ultimately. I was like, you know what? I'm going to make him someone else's problem. And I did. And I had more benefits and not having to worry about that. So moving into the K realm, though, the guys that are throwing those Ks, the best pitchers that we have here, we got about 5 guys listed here that we like, or that you like. So let's start it off with draft pick number 2.
Yes, the best pitcher, best floor of any of the pitchers that we're going to be talking about today is Jack Leiter. There's upside for an SB2 outcome, possibly, maybe even a little higher than that. But the kid is unbelievably mature for his young age. He was a sophomore, draft eligible sophomore at Vanderbilt, and the Rangers took him, which the chatter going into the draft was that he wanted the Red Sox to pick him, and at worst the Mets to pick him at 10. But I feel like young.
At worst, the Mets.
Well, I mean what we're looking.
Does he want to get hurt? Because that's what
Yeah.
the Mets
Yeah.
do to their
Does he
pitchers.
wanna just-
Seriously.
But you got to also understand the Mets have done well with similar profile.
Oh, I get it. I get
true.
it. Yeah, they've got phenomenal
And
pitching. They just always get hurt. This is
just because they're all
sort of
hurt
whatever.
right now. I'm sure somebody got hurt tonight. I know Stroman pitched. I haven't looked at whether he made it through. I
don't
just
know.
cringe every
Walker.
time. I'm a recovering Mets fan. I'll probably be a Mets fan again when my contract with this org runs out.
Now that
So
you
we'll
say
just
that,
stay
I've got to
recovering.
look. He
Yeah,
is shutting out the Braves.
Okay.
Or no, he didn't pitch tonight. No, he pitches
It was
tomorrow.
a doubleheader, man.
Oh, I
He
gotta look at the first one.
He pitches the
He
first.
Yeah.
lost 2-0. Went 5 innings. Not great. Anyway.
Yeah. But anyway,
Well, that's not bad.
yeah, it's your normal Met thing. But like that's where he was seeing himself, mostly because of money, mostly because of his dad's familiarity with the Mets organization and that kind of thing. If anybody doesn't know, Jack Leiter's uncle is Mark Leiter, former major league player,
Mhm.
and his nephews or his cousins, Mark Leiter Jr. He might have had a famous father too, named
Yeah,
Al.
maybe. Just maybe.
yeah,
Just maybe.
Al
maybe.
later?
Al Leiter. I don't know.
I might have heard of him.
Yeah. Threw his slider, kind of
Ale,
like a
maybe?
cut. Yeah. I mean,
Ale.
he was a decent pitcher. He pitched
Is
a
it Ale?
shutout. He
Ale
pitched a
later?
shutout in a wild card game for the Mets one time. I remember that. Beautiful game. One of the worst athletes I've ever seen on the mound. But Jack is a wonderful athlete. A phenomenal athlete, and it really shows in his delivery. His delivery is a little unorthodox. Very athletic delivery. Gets the most out of his frame. He's not the biggest pitcher in the world. He's also a guy. I don't know how familiar you guys are with vertical approach angle. It's something that I really focused on the Baseball HQ website today or this year so far, and it's also something that like a lot of much smarter writers have covered this year. But it's essentially something that you can measure. And I'm going to butcher this. I'm a little buzzed, so I apologize for this. But vertical approach angles, it's a measurement that can measure where a fastball will work best at as it approaches the zone. So we see a lot of vertical approach angles closer to 0. They're usually in the negative numbers. And this vertical approach angle from Leiter is close to 0. And what that does is he's a guy that succeeds throwing fastballs at a flatter plane. Okay. So a bigger negative number, like a -10 would be, -8 would be a guy that is best at a lower vertical angle that the ball comes in. So you're talking about a sinker baller, okay?
Okay.
Would be like a -8 type guy. The guys that are up in the zone and that are staying above the hitter's plane right now have exceptional vertical approach angles. They are, usually going to be guys that have studied this and that are really tech savvy. But more and more, you're seeing pitchers drafted. Ryan Cusack, who got drafted by the Braves this year, is one of those guys. Jordan Wicks, who we'll be talking about a little later, is a guy that has a fastball efficiency and a vertical approach angle that is something teams want. Because right now we have all the hitters concentrating on launch angle.
Right.
We want these high pitches, and we want them to ride. We want them to create this riding action. So Leiter has one of the highest efficiency fastballs in this draft, and he throws it hard. It usually sits in the mid-90s. So like that, along with all of his secondaries, which are above average to better pitches, make him very, very, very high-floored player with ceiling left. He's a guy that I believe, we're going to see more and more pitchers like this until hitting adjusts to the higher plane fastballs. But a guy, for instance, a guy who performed, you mentioned the college stats, who dominated this year, but fell in the draft to the Tigers in the second, or in the competitive balance round. Ty Madden, he's kind of the opposite of it. He doesn't really, Texas, where he came from, is kind of behind the cutting edge with these type of pitchers. So schools like Mississippi State, where Bednar came from, Wake Forest, where Cusack came from, and Vanderbilt, where Leiter and Rocker came from, they're kind of on, their pitching labs are on the cutting edge of technology. So I believe Madden fell because the beliefs out there that the way he currently pitches is not necessarily going to be conducive to today's game. He's trying to, for years, the tall guys, we kind of called them, taking advantage of a downward plane, but we've realized that you have to be fine with that downward plane. You can't miss. And those guys, and that's because they don't have natural plane on their fastball. They're just throwing it downhill, essentially. And so that falls right into the launch angle world right now. Yeah. Where guys are coming in underneath instead of, when we were growing up, we were told to go like this, right? We were told to go like this and then kind of chop down and then back up. Right. They're starting down here already.
They're coming down faster than up. Yeah. So
guys like Leiter, guys like Jordan Wicks, who we'll be talking about very shortly, are guys that have, either their colleges or their, them on their own, or through instruction have really, kicked off this whole vertical approach and taken advantage of staying above these swing planes and dominating. And that's what makes Leiter so good, is his fastball efficiency is superb. And that's even saying, earlier in the year, when he was pitching that no-hitter was not one of his best games. He in the sense of staying above the swing planes. He was just missing bats everywhere. But against better competition, he wasn't able to sustain that, and then he made that adjustment and was a lot better. So I know, long-winded answer, but I wanted to get that all out there. And while I didn't do the best job, I can blame this empty AVL IPA, which reminds me, I'm going to open another beer.
Yes. We already opened up our second. I'm on to something, AJ, that you gave me.
It's a
gave
growler.
Me this one.
I can't even.
I finally.
Oh, nice. Bat squatch.
The bat squatch. It's all right. I gave it 3.5. It's not the best, but it's good.
I'm on Sweetwater Hazy IPA from Atlanta.
Good stuff.
It's good.
All right, so let's talk about Kumar Rocker, who is a guy that we saw some filthy film from all over the place, especially from the Pitching Ninja guys there on your hat. I saw lots of clips with him on Twitter. He's a fun guy to watch. He's very electric and very animated on the mound too, which is fun. But what do you think about him getting picked 10th by the Mets, which actually shocked me, him falling that far?
It was a good selection by the Mets. And it was a team that made sense. There was a lot of rumors going into the draft that he was going to be a Kansas City Royal at, I think, number 7. And the Royals were pretty heavy, along with the Nationals, who picked after the Mets. Were two of the teams that had the heaviest interest in his high school draft year. He's a kid that came from a Athens, Georgia area school. His dad is a former football player named Tracy Rocker, who is also a coach, line coach, defensive line coach. And that's why he came out of that place, that part of Georgia, is because his dad was the line coach at Georgia. He was line coach at Tennessee. I think he might be with Carolina now. I'm not 100% sure. Same like Leiter, athletic bloodlines in that family. Rocker in high school came out just incredible his senior year. Hamstring injury kind of, hurt his stock a little. I thought he was throwing about 90% of maybe even 85% his last start of the year, which was a playoff game against 2020 third-round pick Cole Wilcox. It was one of the best days of scouting I've ever had, because I also saw another draft pick later in the day. But anyway, he's a guy that at times has shown brilliance and has been a GIF monster. Or GIF, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it's supposed to be GIF. I call it GIF. I
call it GIF too.
I refuse to call it the peanut butter.
Yeah, that's true. But the thing is like through all that dominance, whether it's been in college or in high school, there's been parts of his career where he hasn't been as dominant, and it was a harder evaluation because the moments of dominance were also, there was some, less than dominance. And we kind of saw some of that in the College World Series this year. First against
walking
Arizona.
guys a lot.
Yeah, and his velocity was down. His stuff wasn't crisp whatsoever. And like, there's a part of me that, the part of me says that he's the highest upside pitcher in this draft of the college guys. He has the best chance at the SP1 ranking. But then again, the inconsistency we've seen throughout the last few years, we didn't get to see in 2020 because the season got called, and we saw it early in 2019, and then he became dominant. So he hasn't put together a season where we've seen him at his best. We've seen him lose velocity at various times. It's to me, I think that's why he fell. I think he was a top 5 pick, even with slot money in consideration. But I think he fell to where he fell, not necessarily because of slot. It's just because you can't really, stake a claim to, is this guy really what he is? I think he's in a great place. There's a lot of power pitchers in New York, whether they're injured or not, but there's guys that he can learn from, especially conditioning wise. He's a well-conditioned guy. He might even be too muscular, to be honest with you.
He's a big dude. 6'5", like
big
250.
Dude. He's
250,
a big
6'5", 250, man. He's big.
He was a big dude in college or high school, and now he's just. I think it's a great fit for him. It's an organization that has turned power pitchers into contribiters. I think that I like him better on the Royals. I don't know what the Royals were doing with their 7th pick. For a team that is, I'm sorry, not really competing. It looked like they were drafting for 4 or 5 years from now when they need players quickity split. So I thought that Rocker was 7, and I was very surprised when he wasn't.
I know that many Mets fans were jumping up and down when they got Rocker. As they probably should have been. The dude's electric, but yeah, there are concerns. I did watch a little bit of that a few of the Vanderbilt games that in the College World Series where, he was shaky, man. It was like, I was expecting dominance, and I'm like, oh, this isn't what I was thinking. I never seen him pitch on TV, and I'm like, what? Who's this guy? This isn't that good. I'm just looking at the gifts and thinking he's gonna be awesome, and he should have been. But hopefully he can get the command and control, and hopefully he can stay healthy. I know that obviously 2 big concerns for him. But the next guy here you listed down was Jackson Jobe. He got drafted by the Tigers. Give us a little take on him.
Well, I think he's the highest upside guy in the whole draft. I mean, we're talking about a prep guy. Last year we talked about Avl, who was an Oregon prep who the Phillies drafted. The Phillies went and drafted Painter this year out of Florida, out of Calvary Christian High School. And I don't know what the Phillies are doing either. Let's just that real quick. But I love this.
Sorry, AJ.
Tigers. Sorry, I love this.
Makes 2 of us.
Yeah. I love this pick from the Tigers, and I think that they got the highest upside pitcher. And let me get to my notes here because I don't want to miss out on this. He's obviously not the one I'm the most familiar with. I relied heavily on my evaluation through a few videos from the different prospect showcases this year. I also relied on some scouting reports from some people in Oklahoma. Luckily, I have some good contact there. What I really enjoyed about him, he's a guy who utilizes that flatter plane on his fastball. It's a easy velocity. We're talking about a guy that's sitting 94, 96, and staying above the bats. The bat plane with a rising fastball. The slider is probably, the video I saw on the slider is probably the best prep slider that I've ever seen. And the ability to manipulate the spin is elite for somebody that age. I'm not saying it's an elite pitch. It won't, who knows if it ends up there, but for a guy that's 18 years old, to be able to have that feel of spin and to be able to manipulate the spin depending on what you need out of the pitch, and to also be able to command it, something that I'm just saying you very rarely see. It's a two-plane breaker, and that vertical drop is scary. The changeup is low to mid 80s. It has deceptive arm side fading action. I didn't really see any tumble in my looks, but it looks to at least be an average major league pitch at projection.
Can you explain to me what tumble is?
Okay, so our fade is just like fade. Okay, so you start out with essentially the changeup is like this, and then it will fade. Yep. And if he's a right-hander, let me try to. It will
I know what you mean.
Okay. Yeah. Tumble, it goes like. You see that?
So it goes down and down. Curves.
It drops. I'm doing the same fading action, but instead
it drops. Okay.
Yeah. So you're getting that arm. So I didn't see the tumble in any of those things, but we're talking about an 18-year-old and who's a good athlete who repeats his delivery exceptionally well. Like, Mick Abel was a guy that, we hadn't seen before. And then this year we saw a guy that might be better than him. And so I really like him. I think that, he has the greatest upside of any pitcher in this draft. And that's Rocker included. I said that he was the greatest collegiate upside in the draft. So I really believe the Tigers did a phenomenal job with this draft pick. This is kind of their bread and butter right now is developing pitchers, and hopefully that continues with Job.
Yeah, I think it would be good. All right, so the last two guys here, we got Gavin Williams with Cleveland from ECU, and Jordan Wicks. We've already alluded to him. So real quick, just speed through for Williams. What do you like on Williams, and then let us know your thoughts on Wicks.
He's a guy with some injury concerns, some injury issues throughout his time in school. There was a finger injury that has some concern. He's a guy that has a high fastball strike rate, and that's something that we kind of look for. I mean, Leiter had one, and it's something that we track, that I track, I should say, at Baseball HQ. I say we, like everybody does the same things I do. They don't. But fastball strike percentage is a big deal for me, and this guy also has the secondary stuff that could play it up. I really feel like he's, after Rocker has the greatest after Rocker and Leiter has the greatest upside of SPs, starting pitchers in this draft. And I had him tied with, that was not quietly. Oh,
good try again, AJ.
I think that's worth a beer.
You're failing tonight, AJ. That is ridiculous.
The way that you do that is you ask your question, AJ, while you're opening it. You're
what's funny?
What's funny is Joe was trying to be all super quiet about his. I was like, no.
What's funny is you're down. You're down here with yours, and I wasn't trying to be quiet with mine. I cracked it open. You're like down here under the mic, like, bonk. Get that.
It's a powerful ceramic growler.
Okay.
What do you want from me?
All right,
Okay?
let's finish up.
I just feel like you could have segued.
So
You could have segued. You could have asked your question, and as you asked the question, just pop. And it would have been like we could have put some sort of graphic there. All right. Anyway, Williams is. I'm through Williams, and Jordan Wicks is a guy, high efficiency fastball, riding fastball. What I like about him is there's a floor of an SP4, SP5 starter, but there is some upside. I like him a little better than some of the other guys like McGreevy that got picked around this pick. I feel like from maybe the Bednar pick all the way to the Tommy Mace pick in the second round, a lot of these starting pitchers were interchangeable with different degrees of, whether your preference was one guy or the other. My preference here was for Williams and for Wicks. And Wicks, especially with his slider and his changeup combination, the changeup is a plus pitch. Slider has the possibility of being an above average pitch. I think that he can get up to a SP3, upside if everything works out with that slider and he continues to progress with his fastball and with his changeup.
All right. So that's what we've got for like the category type players. So to finish things off here, we got a couple more questions. The first one is rip through your top 12 overall for a Dynasty Baseball first-year rookie draft.
Okay. That's going to be easy because I have it written down here.
Perfect.
Henry Davis actually number one. Again, I would say 1A and 1B might be Marcelo Meyer. But the way I looked at this was Davis is the best college bat, the closest ready college bat. And I'm a big fan of targeting those guys. Of course, if you're in more of a rebuild, of course, Meyer would be your 1A, and maybe Davis might be your 1B, or maybe it will be Lawler or Watson.
Okay.
Number 3, I have Watson. I just love – I'm a Jazz Chisholm fan. I love what he brings to the game. And Watson has a chance to be a better Jazz Chisholm. I think that he might actually hit for a little more average than Chisholm if everything works out. I have Lawler 4, Leiter 5. Krauser 6. I think that he brings an interesting mix to fantasy. Fralick and Rocker are 7 and 8. Guy that we didn't talk about, Matt Mclean, who dealt with a finger injury, got drafted by the Reds with UCLA. He was a guy that Arizona took in the 20th something round in 2018, and he's a guy that has a hit tool and it's something that the Reds don't necessarily have. They strike out so much that
they do.
This might be a guy that they can build to give their lineup a little more help.
Seems like they tried to go that route with Jonathan India too. Like he seems like he's like a much better hitter than the rest. Pure hitter than the rest of the guys on their team.
And
they're all swinging this guy.
We saw what happened to him in the playoffs last year against the Braves, where they would just kept on waiting for a 3-run home run and never got 2 guys on base to get that 3-run home run.
Right.
So, that's a weakness for them. Number 10, I would have Brady House, who we talked about, probably the biggest power bat in this draft. And then, 11, 12, I had about 5 different guys, and I ended up going with Gavin Williams because I like his upside as a starter. If you notice, I don't have Job in there. I'm a little, my thing with prep arms is I'm not a big first round guy with prep arms. And then number 12, that's where I have Job actually. So I do have him as a first round pick. But that's
not at 11. You're 12.
Yeah, my 12th.
So you're playing a 10 team drafts. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I guess some 10 team drafts are not first rounders, but that's kind of how I feel is I'm a little more apprehensive, even if he's the most polished prep arm that I've seen. I'm still, we know the history. Guys don't, so many roadblocks. I mean, we saw Ethan Hankins this year look like a stud in spring training, and then he needs Tommy John surgery. So, like, it's those type of things that just scare me off of prep arms.
Yeah, it's tough, especially because you got to wait for those guys to develop, even though they have so much talent coming out of high school. They still have to develop tons. There's so many years where just a lot can go wrong, or they just don't develop. Period. Like we've seen it time and time again. But so you gave us your top 12. Give us a few guys that you think are gonna go, easily gonna be second, third, round dynasty league draft for first round draft picks, that you are all in on for that value at least.
I'm a fan of Trey Sweeney, who the Yankees drafted.
Okay.
I think 21st was kind of a surprise. Now I don't think his upside is where some people have it projected, but I think he's a very safe bet. And in a climate right now where, especially with college bats, we've had a lot of guys not perform up to expectations. Sweeney, in a lesser level, performed, but then when the lights were the brightest, also did really well against better competition. So I have him as my second round target. I think that a second round pick that might be in the second, third round is a guy that I've talked about too, is Judd Fabian. The power potential there is like Brady House's. I think that there's a hit tool in there. I think he'll hit enough to not be a total weak BA guy or weak on base percentage guy. I think this guy will get on base enough and hit for a high enough average that that should work itself out.
I was told to ask you about Judd. Granted, it was from a Red Sox fan, but it sounded like, I think you mentioned his name earlier, that he was the guy who kind of dropped because he didn't perform his senior year or whatever year.
Yeah, it was his sophomore year, and he just had a very lackluster campaign. He had a high strikeout rate, which we know the Red Sox aren't afraid of. We see Bob Halback.
Those AL East ballparks, man, you don't care.
Yeah, they don't care.
Get a hold of one, they're out.
But I think that his while I was scouting Jack Leiter for our podcast, I watched him against Florida, and Fabian had a huge game against him, and you started seeing the glimpses of what we thought was going to be his sophomore year, his draft eligible year. And I really feel like getting into pro camp, he's going to carry that momentum over. And I feel like he has the potential of being a riser of some sort, especially if he debuts this year.
Yeah, sounds like it. So
yeah. All right, so
finish it off here, AJ.
With all that said, the last question we got here then is obviously there's guys you'd like to draft, and then there's guys you want to avoid in rookie drafts. So who are a couple players that you're avoiding in the rookie drafts that people are going to just pick just because they were drafted early?
Well, I already mentioned Benny Montgomery. I just don't think he's going to hit enough. I think the tools are there, and in my leagues, I know which managers are going to select him most likely. And if it's a manager that I believe that I have good, a trading history with or something like that, he might be a guy that I still target, and use for later, as I mentioned with Marco Luciano earlier and some of the other guys. But he's a profile that does attract certain managers too. Another guy that I'm just not really on, and it's mostly there's a few red flags with Colson Montgomery. We're just going to pick on all the Montgomerys, the prep guy from Indiana. And Colson is a guy that you either really love or you really don't. And my thing with him is he was drafted by the White Sox. The White Sox were absolutely enamored with him. And also the Mets were too. There was rumors that they were going to cut an underslot deal with him had Rocker not fallen where he fell to. So like this was a guy that had interest throughout the first round. He's on the older side. We tend to see older prep guys, and he's older than 19. He's actually a few months older than some of the guys that we considered old. And the White Sox have never really had success with this type of profile. Just to get to maybe another guy that I would have a hard time considering would be Sam Bachman, who's the Angels pick. He's a guy that we haven't really figured out whether he's a reliever or a starter. I actually like the pick for the Angels because they need almost immediate pitching if they're going to do something during the Trout
era,
Ohtani era. They're going to need some immediate help, whether that's in the pen or whether that's a starting pitcher. I'm on the side that he's a reliever, and I don't think he has that dominant pitch that really makes him a dominant closer type. I think that he's a really good high leverage guy. Maybe, a setup man, maybe even a closer, but not like a top closer.
Sounds like maybe his sinker and slider are good, but other than that, I mean, that's
it's that, and the delivery is very
he's bizarre.
very bizarre, and it's hard to project that kind of stuff into a starting pitching profile. I like it's funny. You can like a pick because of the team that picked them, and also the Angels picked 20 pitchers,
but it's not a fantasy profile.
But it's not a fantasy profile, and I had him ranked, within that range of those guys that got picked between the 14th and the second round Tommy Mace pick. I'm not quite sure which pick that was by the Indians, but he fit into that profile. But I think that his upside is as a reliever, and I think he could be an absolute dominant one too. I just don't see the one pitch that really carries the profile, kind of like Emmanuel Clase of the Indians, who has that one pitch that really makes him dominant, and like Kimbrel in his prime, and Jansen in his prime. They had that one pitch that was just exceptional.
Well, they did save $1.1 million by signing him, picking him at 9.
To sign more pitchers.
Hey, so that's fine. That's what's working right now. So, and I think a lot of teams are catching on to that, it feels like. So, all right, man. Well, that's all we've got. So before we let you bounce for the night, why don't you remind everybody where they can find your stuff, man?
All right. Well, there's a long list, but we're going to keep it short. The Eyes Have It podcast, which is available on Twitter. It's from Baseball HQ. We just started it. We're on episode 11 this week, which is going to be on our top 50 midseason prospects. I host this with Brent Hershey. We're also going to cover some Pirates prospects. And guess what? This week is I have a 2-article week at Baseball HQ for our subscribers. The podcast is available to anybody, by the way. But the articles will be on Pirates guys. I'm always at the park. I'm also at home scouting guys, and I'm really exhausted right now. And this beer has really gone to my head.
You were telling me you had a long day before this, so I appreciate you coming on for sure and hanging out with us. We always love having you on,
time for you guys. Always make time for you guys.
You are one of our favorites for sure. So we will let you go, get some sleep, and
yes,
we'll
you can see my eyes there.
We will see you again for sure in a few months. Come baseball prospect time again.
Yeah, hopefully we don't, that podcast competition. Hopefully we don't face.
I know, right? I know. I don't want to lose you guys again.
I think
we're gonna get smashed.
Yeah, I mean,
All right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna vote for HQ. I mean,
I mean, that wasn't close.
tough call, but
wasn't that funny that I was going to be on
You were
the
on
podcast that week? That was
the same week.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was the exact
Crazy.
same week.
And I was like, I can't promote you guys. I'm sorry. I don't,
Oh, dude.
I mean,
We didn't stand
you
a
don't
chance.
understand. Patrick is just one of the nicest guys. I could not go against him.
As soon as I saw the matchup, I went, "Oh my gosh!" Yeah, I didn't say it. We didn't
Like,
say a chance.
somebody's watching the show because they're seeing it.
But hey,
We,
I am just actually honored to be on that show because I will be perfectly honest. Like, we're more of a football show than we are baseball.
Yeah.
We do
Yeah.
plenty of baseball, but we are way more into football, and we're way more successful with football. But we bring guests on like you and a bunch of our baseball writers to help us out, and so. I guess that means something. I'm grateful for being in it, and I hope we're in it again next year. I would, love to build the audience, and whatever. If we go against you guys again, we'll take the loss.
Yeah. Well, it might be the junior. It might be us. So we have two now. So we'll
Oh
see.
man, you guys are gonna knock us out of it like completely. They're gonna put both of you guys in and just shove us out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, man.
I
Well, have a
think
good night,
you
man.
stay. All right.
And
You guys have a
we'll
great
do it
evening.
again soon. See ya.
Cheers,
All right,
my
man.
friend.
Cheers.
All right, AJ. I think we've about had it. I'm pretty beat myself. So
Yeah. I have finished a growler tonight. So
holy
I'm
cow,
ready for
that's a good one. That's a good night for you, man. But yeah, thanks for Chris for coming on. Love having him here. Phenomenal information. I know we had a bunch of guys from the Slack channel on Fantasy Six Pack commenting about how good of a job Chris was doing and all the great information. So kudos to him. And yeah, I think that's it for the night. See you guys on Thursday when we are back with our normal.
Randall might be gone. We'll see.
We'll see when we're back with our football division previews. So see you then. Peace.